Well, I vote we get started.
Sounds good to me. And yeah, last week's open hour was so incredibly heavy.
Hmm.
I could go for an easy one.
Yeah. Well, this should be. So let's see, open hour. All right, welcome everybody. For those who don't know me, possibly some of our people watching on Twitch, I'm Cassandra Ferris. I am the community manager here at SaltStack. What that basically means is my job is to help the Salt core team and our contributor base collaborate more effectively. We do that in a lot of different ways. And today we're going to run through some news and updates, recap the Docs Jam, and then we're mostly going to be talking about some outstanding SEPs and start working to make decisions on them or finish them off. A few quick announcements. SaltConf Virtual is October 29th. Registration is open, and I believe this full schedule will be out next week. Go ahead and join us for that. It'll be a good time. You can find that information at saltconf.com. Releases, SEPs, and updates. This week, the core team has been focusing on Tiamat testing, bug fixes, and preparing for the magnesium RC. The code freeze was September 29th, but there was a delay in the magnesium RC due to some test issues. So the RC is targeted to be out on or before October 13th. And from a community standpoint, the big focus has been our documentation jam that we ran yesterday, and then I've been doing some SEP reviews and working on those this morning. So I wanted to give everybody some highlights about the documentation jam. Well, first, does anybody have any other announcements? Okay, so highlights about the documentation jam then. For those who aren't familiar, what happened with the documentation jam is we always hear the feedback that documentation needs to be better. And so we decided that one way to do this would be to help just set aside a day that community members could come together and spend a whole day just focusing on docs. And we wound up making a list of different things people could work on. We had different tracks you could take as part of that documentation jam, and actually had a really good day yesterday. Some highlights: Ken and Derek fixed some module documentations. We did have at least one new contributor. One interesting side effect of having the event on Twitch was that we had somebody who was completely new to Salt come and join us. They were actually looking for advice on how to become a software developer. And that question led to a lot of really interesting side conversations about how to get involved in software, how everybody in technology is always learning all of the time, and how you don't have to be an expert to contribute to open source. And that all worked out really well because our keynoter, Erin McKean, who works for Google in their documentation department, reiterated some of those points in her keynote. She talked about the importance of asking questions and not being afraid to learn, and talked about how you don't have to be an expert to contribute to open source, especially not documentation. So that was a fun little side effect. And Elisa, did you have anything you wanted to add about what you achieved or the team achieved at the Docs Jam?
So I was able to open up a PR for, I created a new topic that gives a highlight that overviews all of the SALT system architecture. I got some really excellent feedback from Gareth and why is Twain Boy? Why am I blanking on his name? Thank you. I wanted to say Wayne, and I knew that wasn't right. From Gareth and Shane about the diagram that I created to describe SALT architecture. So I opened up a PR for that topic, and for me personally, this was kind of a really big milestone. I have attempted to contribute to the open SALT docs several times over the past year and have always failed. Something always goes wrong with my environment setup or some element along the chain, and it was just really exciting for me to be able to actually have a successful PR and to know how to help other people to bridge that gap in the future. So I know that might not sound like a big deal, but it felt like a big deal to me. So
that's awesome. Anybody else who's at the Doc Jam, do you have anything you'd like to add or highlights? I know Sage, you were in and out, and Gareth, you were.
Oh, I thought it was really good. I hope we just have some more.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we talked tentatively about having PR jams and Doc Jams maybe as part of every release cycle. and doing them like mid-release so things have time to get in before code freeze. But that's all stuff we can plan as we move forward. Anybody else have any highlights or updates or things to add? Okay, the next topic we had on the agenda was VMware's acquisition of SaltStack. Just wanted to find out if anybody had any questions. We did last week have a whole open hour dedicated to the VMware acquisition. The video of that is up on YouTube and the notes are in the open hour. Thanks to Wayne Werner, he had kind of live blogged or live tweeted, live blogged the open hour highlights, and so that gave me a good base, and I basically just used that as a format of the notes so we could keep track of who was saying what and everything, so the notes are also up to date for the open hour. If you see things in there and still have questions, just reach out to the team. Any other acquisition updates? Nope. Okay, then on to SEPs. We have 4 of them that are open right now. The first one is on SEP 25, adding runtime registers to Salt. It sounds like on that one, we basically just need to find out if anything else needs to be added to the SEP, since the original contributor had said it was kind of a first draft. So we'll be reaching out to them on that one soon. SEP 26 is package salt with Tiamat. We should also be able to close that soon, ideally within the next week. Tom or Sage, do you have anything to say about how to actually make that happen?
I think it just needs some attention. Gonna give it my attention.
Awesome.
We have made considerable progress with Tiamat with respect to packaging salt. There were a number of minor features that we wanted to get into Tiamat to make that as smooth as possible, as well as making sure that we were able to pip install extensions to Tiamat installations. So that's moved forward very nicely. I want to give a quick shout out to Pedro, who's done some significant work there, as well as Tyler Johnson and Megan. Big thanks. Excited to see Tiamat getting more traction in the wild as well, and especially since it's being built to be able to handle something as big as Salt. We're confident that it's going to be able to handle other general use cases. So things are looking good on the Tiamat end. Thanks.
Awesome. Any other Tiamat updates? Okay, and then the next SEP is SEP 27. That's on creating a community advisory board. We've had some conversation about that. I have written up a draft SEP that I believe needs some formatting changes. And I think that's something that we would like to move forward with, but I also am wondering if maybe the acquisition would impact us moving forward on that right now. So I think that's just going to sit on hold for a minute.
Yeah, I would say that any changes in governance right now wouldn't be the best time to do it, and that we should wait until the acquisition does close, which hopefully sooner than later. But we're getting really close to that. Yeah.
Anything else to add on that? Okay, and then we did get a new SEP. I will link it here in the chat. It is on adding inclusive language, which is something I know we'd had some early conversations about. Basically, the proposal is that we remove terms like master, blacklist, whitelist out of the code base. That is something that we are looking at, but it's also something that VMware has taken a stance on, and so to some extent we will defer to them. But if we want to chat about it for a few minutes, we can do that now.
Yeah, so I can comment on that really quickly. We definitely don't want to be in a position where we feel that we have offensive language being used inside of our software. With that, our main worries have been blacklist and whitelist, of course, and changing those to allow list and block list. That's already been explored. At the same time, we need to be very careful not to introduce bugs, and we need to be very careful as to what our overall approach there is. I've always tried really hard to avoid having offensive language. I mean, I was unaware years ago that whitelist and blacklist were issues. I purposefully chose minion and master because master is a very generic term. And at the time, it was certainly not considered offensive, and same with minion. With that said, as we get rolled up into VMware, they have policies in place around these sorts of things, which have been extremely well thought out. And so that's something that we want to take into account as we're going through and making these determinations. We also need to take into account that when we change, if we potentially change Salt Master, that will have an extremely far-reaching effect on the code. This is not something that can be easily changed without creating significant potential issues for end users. And we need to be very careful about making sure that we balance the needs of many groups as we go into these things. We need to be very delicate here. Thanks.
I'd also build on kind of the stuff that Tom just said, and like whatever changes we make in the future, we'll have to follow any sort of a deprecation path because there are things that we cannot simply change overnight between releases. We have to give people a heads up that we are going to be renaming things to give them a heads up. To Tom's point, we don't want to introduce bugs or usability issues overnight or between releases.
Anybody else have other thoughts to add on that? Okay, well, I think we'll just keep that on hold, and we'll update you as things change with that. And that's our last formal agenda item. So does anybody have anything else that we want to chat about or bring up today? Okay, well, I guess that concludes our open 20 minutes. Like Tom said earlier, last week's was a lot of information that we threw at you all, so see you all next week. We do these every Thursday at 11 a.m. Mountain, 5 p.m. UTC. And if you have questions or topics you'd like to discuss in the open hour, you can go ahead and submit those through Slack or we have a topic suggestion form on Google. And enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, everybody.